Week in review, week commencing the 6th of May, so let's get to it. So this week started off with a bank holiday, which for me, I didn't really enjoy, purely for the fact of it crammed my working week into 4 days essentially. However, I would feel that although I felt unorganised this week, I had a very successful week in the fact of the amount of viewings I undertook and the leads that I developed essentially. I felt unorganised for the fact of I was doing viewings throughout the day, so I was in and out from in front and behind of the laptop essentially, so I never had a fixed time window essentially to focus, and I feel like that disrupted my workflow. Whereas previous weeks what I had been doing was essentially blocking out the day, focusing on lead generation, relationship building with agents, making the necessary phone calls and undertaking the due diligence that I need to take. However, I would then do the viewings at the back end of the day, generally back to back, 2, maybe 3 together. However, this past week, I thought I'd try something new, doing those viewings back to back at the end of the day as well, but also doing some viewings during the day. So that meant that I was effectively, for what I felt was losing time during the day, travelling to and from these viewings, which I may have been able to better spend that time essentially because it would have been blocked out, allocated to another task. However, moving into next week, I have done the same again, but I'm trying to get a bit more organised in that sense, and I'm using the weekend to get ahead of myself, get my content planned, get all my due diligence done up front, and then that should then mean that it frees up a bit of time to focus on the following week and the upcoming viewings that I'm working on. So that's this week in sort of a bit of a nutshell. Obviously we started the week off with a bank holiday, which was great in terms of obviously having that time with the family. However, moving into the week, I had 7 viewings spread across the week, and I should have had 8, but 1 was cancelled. So that was 2 days of 3 viewings and 1 day of 2 viewings, which it should have been, but it ended up being 1. So yeah, that was that side of things. And again, as I touched upon last week, I like to get plenty booked in because you never know what's going to happen. And also, if any get cancelled, at least you've got some in reserve. So then effectively it's not a wasted week. For the work that I'm undertaking at present, so some of the offers that I placed over recent weeks, those particular properties have now been reduced. I've had emails come through. I've actually started negotiations with those agents, trying to see if we can come to some sort of common ground to have a deal done, because they're still on the market even 2 weeks after being reduced. And for what I'm saying to the agents is that obviously I'm here, I can help you out, I can solve your problem. However, I believe the agents are understanding of myself, but it's more the vendor that are causing the issues because they're holding out for these prices that were effectively set back in 2022 when we had the boom, and they're looking back at those house prices still thinking they can achieve them today, and also looking at properties 1-2 miles away, which has no relevance to where you are. You couple of 100 meters at most, that is relevant. Apart from that, it's not relevant. So I think the agents need to do a bit more in the sense of stepping up to the mark and having those frank conversations with the vendors. And I think that will help get things moving in the market as well. Whereas, although things are starting to pick up a little bit, it's still slow for investment purposes, I believe, because of these issues that are occurring and offers not being accepted purely on the fact of the vendors wanting the higher price. Whereas, as I've just said, if the agents can help that process along, there's going to be deals to be done. I can't count off the top of my head. There must be 5 or 6 at least where they're still on the market and they've been reduced by 10, 15, 20,000. One in particular, 30,000, but I'll get to that in a moment. These figures and offers that I've placed, I'm now only 15, 20,000 away. So a deal can be done. In the whole scheme of things, it's not large sums of money, but to the vendors, I understand it probably is, because it's a deceased estate, or if they're looking to move on, which I'm trying to target properties which aren't in a chain, just to help that process of being able to negotiate the best deal. So going into the opportunity where it's been reduced by 30,000, I'm going back about 6 weeks or so ago now. And this property was originally listed for over 200 at the time when I found it, but it had been recently reduced to 190. I've been having the conversations with the agents and said, based on the figures for the refurb, the end values, I need to secure it at this and I can move now. So that figure was around the 150, 155 mark. However, they said the vendor was adamant they didn't want any less than 190 with where it was, and there was multiple people in the estate. So that led me to effectively walk away from it, because if they're not willing to move and I need it, and you're talking 30 to 40,000 pounds worth of difference, it's not really a deal that's going to happen anytime soon. However, obviously, as things have progressed over the past 6 to 8 weeks, roughly, this property is slowly reduced. So I think they're coming round to that mindset of actually thinking, as I touched upon it before, we're not going to achieve these prices that we got in 2022. So this is where I've now restarted my negotiations with the agents, and I'm trying to see what can be done, because that property has got a good end value. So with it now being reduced even further and securing it at the price that I need to, it's a great opportunity. However, that original price that I wanted to secure it for, isn't going to be practical now, because the market has slightly dropped again. So I'm going to need to go slightly lower. So that's that one in essence. So that's ongoing. So in terms of my work that I've got ongoing at the moment, I've effectively got fingers in multiple pies, multiple offers on the table, and trying to negotiate these offers for the properties that I've placed and where they've been reduced. So all is looking positive moving forward, and my gut feeling, and I just get this sense that there's going to be a few to drop at once, and that's going to be because there's been no movement, and realistically my offers have been sensible in the current market conditions. So I'm remaining positive. I am positive, and like I say, I've got that gut feeling that it's going to go crazy very, very quickly, because of the fact multiple properties are going to drop and have offers accepted around the same time, purely for the work I've done over the past couple of weeks. So really looking forward to that and seeing what's coming. In terms of anything else moving forward, there's not much else to really touch upon that I can think of that's happened this week in particular. One thing I would probably go into is the viewing that got cancelled on Friday. The reason for that was miscommunication, and I did only ring up on Friday to confirm it. So what I will be doing moving forward, as a tip to myself and anyone else, is when you've got viewings, ring up 1-2 days in advance to confirm them. Although you will get a text message on the day before, the day of, or a phone call saying, can you still attend? But in some cases that doesn't happen, and that's obviously what's happened with that viewing, which I've lost effectively. However, trying to plan it in for next week, due to where the agents are situated, it's slightly an out of area property for them, so they're only there on limited days and times. So trying to navigate that in between my current viewings that I've got booked. I'm going to have to do some jiggery pokery to try and make that work, because it is a good property. It's got some good margins, and it used to belong to a housing association or something along those lines. So it's got sort of decent electrics, decent plumbing, but in terms of the aesthetics of the property, it needs updating to bring it to a modern standard. So refurb costs aren't overly high, given that it's only a 2-bed terrace anyway. So going to see what comes from that, but need to get that booked in. Properties that I have been targeting recently and over the past week have mainly been North Wales based, so slightly out of area from where I've been previous weeks. However, it's a good market to tap into, and I also feel it's slightly less competitive. There's not as many people working in those areas in particular compared to, say, Wirral, Chester, South Manchester, South Liverpool, Warrington. So going to keep my eye on that area this week coming. A lot of my viewings are actually back over towards the Wirral, Ellesmere Port, Chester area again. So it's just depending what comes up and what I can get booked in at the time, and when I'm going through the different opportunities as to what I'm sort of fitting in, and I'm trying to categorise the viewings close together just to make it as efficient as possible. So going back to what I was saying earlier, if I'm doing 2 viewings in one day, try and do them back to back, regardless if that's in the evening or during the day. And then at least then that means that the time is still allocated to block viewing, and then the rest of the time throughout the day either side can be used efficiently. So yeah, hope you've all had a great week. Hope you've all got yourselves planned and set up ready for next week. As they always say, preparing to fail. No, I've got that wrong. Prepare to fail. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So you need to get yourself set up, ready, and moving into the new week on the front foot. So I'll leave it there for now. As I said, don't think I've got anything else to touch up upon. It's been a great week in terms of progress and moving forward, but felt a little bit unorganised. So I'm now trying to get myself organised. And one other thing to touch up upon in terms of organisation is I've got lots of digital sheets and spreadsheets and whatnot, and I need to create a master spreadsheet essentially to determine the status of each property that I've broken down, because there's a few there which I know I've not viewed and I've potentially not rang agents about. That may be because they have sold and I've seen online that they're sold subject to contract, so that might be one reason, or just the fact that I've not got around to booking a viewing because my diary's been full of viewings, and then as I've moved on into the following week, I've not followed it up and I've found newer opportunities. So that's something that I need to do this week. And I've started looking into auction properties as well, which I did look into on Tuesday, and I did have a viewing on an auction property. So that actually failed at auction twice, and it's now effectively going back onto the open market for that reason. There is some structural issues. However, there's been not a structural report done, but there's been an engineer out, and they've effectively written a letter to say there's been historic subsidence. The issues in the property aren't structural, but if there's been subsidence previously, any cracks and stuff in the property are structural. So don't really understand that side of things. However, I did try and make touch with them on Friday actually to gain more clarity on this so I can put forward a sensible offer. The property's broken down, I've done all the due diligence, so great opportunity, but just need to understand this structural element. But with being able to submit offers, I'm thinking if I can't get through to them on Monday, it'll just be submit an offer subject to survey and see where we go from there. So yeah, moving well. I'm feeling positive. Things are going in the right direction for myself, and life is good, really. So yeah, very happy at the moment, and we'll see what comes up in the next week, see what is thrown at me, but also what opportunities are given to me and how we navigate those issues thrown at me, if there is any, which, being a positive person, I doubt that will happen. And yeah, have a great week, everyone.